In this episode, we're going to look at the historical origins of our legal system. Before we take a look at the past, though, we need to think about why do we have laws? What are their purpose? Laws are made to help people get along and keep the peace. There are several factors that we have when we put a law together. A law should be fair, it should be reasonable, it should be understandable, and it should be enforceable. Let's go back in time. The first laws that we're going to look at are the Code of Hammurabi, and this goes all the way back to ancient Babylonia. Now, not all of the laws that were in the Code of Hammurabi were fair. Most of them gave the wealthy of society more protection than the poor. We do need to realize, though, that Hammurabi's code was the very first written code of laws in recorded history. It was based on two different ideas, retribution and restitution. Retribution is the idea of an eye for an eye, that you should be punished with the same velocity or the same veracity as the crime. The other is restitution, that you should have to repay the victim. We still see remnants of this idea of restitution in our laws today. A lot of times people will have to pay restitution if they commit property damage, or if somebody's injured in a car accident, you would have to pay for their injuries. The next is the Israelite laws. You would know these most likely as the Ten Commandments. They're more concerned about punishing a deliberate action than accidental acts of harm. So the Ten Commandments, I'm sure most Christians are familiar with. 10 basic rules that still have relevance in our society today. Next up is the Greek laws, or draconian laws. Ancient Greece, we should remember, is going to be one of our very first democracies that we talk about. Here in ancient Greece, in Athens, there was only a small number of people who were recognized as citizens and had political rights. Women, children, slaves, immigrants, none of them were allowed to have citizenship. And women who were on trial were not even allowed to speak for themselves. But this is what's really interesting about their system. Their juries were huge. You could have over 1,500 people on the jury deciding that person's fate. Now, the reason why they did this is because they were afraid that the jury would be bribed. Who would spend money to bribe over 1,500 people? That was how they figured they would keep the system honest. Next up, we have the Roman laws. Roman laws were based on two different principles: that the law must be recorded, written down, and justice cannot be left in the hands of judges alone to interpret. They start out and they have 12 tablets of Roman law, and they are really considered the foundation of our modern laws today. Now, Roman laws actually lead to lawyers. The Roman Empire was huge, as you can see from the map. It expanded over most of what is today Europe and a lot of northern Africa and the Middle East. They realized that with the more and more and more laws that are passed, they were going to need experts to keep track of all these laws. And that is really where we get the idea of a lawyer. And the first lawyers were in the Roman Empire. Now, with time, we're going to see the Roman Empire split in two. And the eastern half is going to be called the Byzantine Empire. And its first emperor was Justinian. He's going to take these 1,600 different books of Roman law, and he's going to basically pay or commission 10 men to study and clarify them. They're basically going to boil them all down into something that makes sense. That is going to be called the Justinian Code, and it's really going to be the basis of our modern laws here in society. Next up, we have France and the Napoleonic Code. Napoleon was an emperor in France, and he is basically torn between Germanic laws coming out of what today is Germany in the north of France, and the Justinian Code, which is popular in the south of France. He's going to basically boil it down and come up with his own version. And they're going to be popular because it's very non-technical, and it's going to make it easy for the average person to understand. Next up, and lastly, we have English common law. By far, this is the most influential on our American legal system. Common law revolves around the idea of a legal precedent. A precedent is when you look at an older case for guidance on a current case. Common law took Roman law, it took church law, which is called canon, and blended it all together with the idea of individual rights. For most of English history, remember, they're a monarchy. What the king says goes, and he had control of the legal system as well. Over time, however, the system is going to give more and more power to Parliament and democracy, and they're going to focus more on what is called statutes, laws written by a legislator, instead of those tradition and what the king would have said. Okay, that's it for this time.